Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd do my February wrap-up, which, yeah, this is not gonna be a super long video I guess, but we'll see about that. The books that I finished like a long time ago because reading the last couple of weeks just wasn't a priority. I've talked about it in my vlogs, there's a lot going on in my life right now and yeah. I just can't handle all of this at the same time. So for some quick reading stats, I had 6 books on my February TBR from my owned books, and by the end of the month I had finished one of those, and by now it is 2, so wow, me. And then from my library TBR, I had 4 books that I wanted to read in February, and I managed to finish one of those. So yeah, audiobooks saved my life. I was not doing well in February. The first book I had finished in February was The Map of Salt and Stars by Zeyn Joukhadar, I think it's probably maybe how you say it. This is a very interesting book. I really enjoyed it. It follows a girl called Noor, and she is born in America, but her parents are Syrian, and when her father dies from cancer, the mother takes the family back to Syria to kind of start fresh and yeah, get over the grief that they're feeling. Noor has 2 bigger sisters. They were both born in Syria as well, but Noor is the only one who wasn't. She has never been to Syria before, and they're trying to settle in when the conflict and the war starts. So this is set in the middle of the 2010s. From the timeline, you know. So yeah, you have this kind of contemporary timeline, even though it is now a little bit ago, and then you also get kind of a historical, almost like a myth-like tale about a second girl. I think her name is Ravia, and the journeys of Ravia and Noor are very parallel, and yeah, it's kind of explored you know, what's going on in these regions now, but also many years ago, like in the Middle Ages. And I did enjoy this book. I thought it was very well done. I had a little bit of issue with the main character of Noor just because she was a child, and I don't always enjoy reading from a child perspective. So yeah, it wasn't my favorite way to tell the story. It definitely was more annoying at the beginning. I felt like at the end Noor had grown up quite a lot because of what was happening to her. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I would recommend it if you want to read about something more tragic that has happened in recent history. Right now, I don't know if I can recommend reading about war, but you know, at the beginning of the February we were all quite clueless, so yeah. The next book I finished on the same day actually was Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. This was my audiobook for January, but I didn't quite manage to finish it within the month. So this is a fantasy book, and we are following Zorka, who is the 7th child of a lord. She has 6 older brothers, and when she was born her mother died, so now her father is widowed, and he is very concentrated on a war. He's fighting with the Britons, and so Zorka and her brothers are kind of left to their own a lot, and Zorka grows up as the daughter of the forest, so she's a very wild girl, but also she knows a lot about healing and medicines and different herbs and stuff like that. And one day the father decides to marry again, and really bad stuff happens. Now, I don't want to say too much about this. This is a fairy tale retelling, and I knew the fairy tale very well, so I absolutely knew what the plot points of this book would be, which for me definitely hindered my enjoyment a little bit, because I found that I enjoy kind of like reimaginings a little bit more where I don't know what's gonna happen, because if it's like a straight up retelling, just making the story bigger, I find myself always waiting for the plot points that I know will eventually happen. And yeah, I did enjoy the beginning and the middle part of the book, but by the end I was just really done. It's a very, very long book, especially since I listened to it on audio. It took me a month, and I was just over Sorka as a main character. She's just not the type of main character I like reading about, because she is strong, but her strength lies in enduring, and I really wanted her to speak up for herself, at least at the ending of the book, and that never happened. Also, I thought that the ending was super cliche, and also, yeah, it just felt icky to me. I didn't like it. So yeah, overall I gave this book 3.5 stars. I think it was written beautifully. I really liked the writing style. It definitely had that fairy tale feeling to it, but at the same time it was such a bigger scope, and there was so much detail added to this story that yeah, at times it was just too much, honestly. And also another thing I didn't really like is that with every character where we were supposed to understand that they were evil or like villains, they would harm animals. And yeah, I didn't like that. I don't think that you have to put so much harm on animals in a book. I wasn't a fan of that. Yeah, so overall 3.5 stars. It was a fun read, but yeah, I'm not quite sure whether I will continue on reading Juliet Marillier. Just because I'm not quite sure whether she got better at pacing the books. So we'll see about that. Then the next book I finished was An Enchantment of Ravens, and this is also a fantasy book. It's by Margaret Rogerson, and this book follows a girl called Isabel, I think, and she is a painter, and she paints portraits of the Fae. And she is very highly regarded because of that. She's very skillful. And one day the Autumn Prince shows up and wants her to paint his portrait. But she is struggling with painting his eyes. There's just something there that she can't really figure out. And right before she finishes the portrait, she decides to draw feeling into his eyes, and that sets off a whole lot of events. Definitely this book goes into quite a different direction than I expected. I loved the beginning. I really liked seeing the build-up of the relationship, like the way they met and how they spent all this time together while she was painting the portrait. I think that was so good. But then the ending felt a little bit rushed to me. I was really buying into the romance. It's just one of my favorite tropes when there's like this really, yeah, old magical creature, maybe, you know, immortal, and this creature is falling for a mortal girl just because she's awesome. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. So overall, I gave it 4 stars. And I'm very intrigued to read more by Margaret Rogerson now, which was a big surprise for me because I didn't expect to love this book so much. I also enjoyed the fairy tale-esque magical elements in it. As I said, the plot definitely went into a different direction than I expected from what was, you know, given on the blurb. Yeah, I had fun. I enjoyed this book. And then, after I had cleared up all of the books I was still reading from January, I could finally start Blackathon. So I did manage to finish 3 books for Blackathon, and I had started 2 more, and I will talk a little bit about those now. The first book I finished was The Conductors by Nicole Glover. This was my audiobook, and I really, really enjoyed it. This I counted as a thriller. I counted it for a thriller that explores the duality of vengeance and justice. I'm not quite sure whether this is a perfect fit because, for one, it wasn't really a thriller. It's more of a crime story, but also the crime story wasn't that good. I enjoyed other aspects of this book more, but then also the duality of vengeance and justice. I think it is kind of in there because you don't really know what the motivation of the murderer is, and it does look like maybe there's vengeance involved. And this is a kind of crime story that is also magical, so you have some fantasy elements in it. And it is set after slavery was abolished, and we follow a woman called Hetty, and she is now solving crimes with her husband, and especially crimes that no one else cares about. So usually when black people get hurt or get murdered, there isn't really an investigation, and they try to fill that gap. So they were conductors for the Underground Railroad before slavery was abolished, and there is some flashbacks to that as well, but mainly they're trying to solve a murder case where one of their friends was murdered, and there is a kind of symbol kind of scratched into him that is like a cursed symbol. And so yeah, they're trying to figure out what happened there, who killed him, and what the reasons are. And while they're doing that, they have to investigate their own community, because it seems that it has something to do with other people they know, because it is the death of one of their friends. And what I also liked about this book is the relationship between Hetty and her husband, because they had a marriage of convenience, but they're starting to have feelings for each other. And I thought that was really cute as well. So I did like this book for the main character and the kind of dynamics of the community, the relationships that were explored, and the themes. As I said, the crime itself wasn't that interesting, and I did also enjoy the magic, but sometimes it was a bit confusing and a bit convenient. So I think, this book had pros and cons, and in the end I gave it 3.5 stars, but I would recommend it, and I'm definitely gonna listen to the second book soon, because I just really had a nice time listening to this. Then the next book I finished was Small Country by Gael Faye. I counted this as a literary book that is not set in the US, UK or Canada. This is written by a French author who grew up in Burundi, and it is a fictional, but I think it has some autobiographical elements to it, because we follow a small boy called Gabriel. He's around 10 years old, I think, and we follow him when the conflict between the Hutu and the Tutsi in Burundi kind of escalate and a war starts happening. And this is kind of the end to his childhood. And so, yeah, we just follow him through a couple of months or maybe even years, not quite sure what the time frame was exactly, while he is still a boy, and the friends he has, he's very privileged because he has a white father, and his mother is Rwandan? What is the adjective? She's from Rwanda. She's also a refugee because of these kind of conflicts. She had to flee to Burundi, so she doesn't really feel at home there either. And yeah, it's just very interesting. I think that the child perspective was a little bit of a hindrance to the book, because some of these themes weren't really explored a lot, because you were seeing everything through the eyes of a child and with the kind of reflections of a child. Also, the boy Gabriel, he always says that he doesn't want to get involved in politics, and so you as a reader also stay out of it a lot. So yeah, I thought it could have been done in a more interesting way, but this is a very short book, and I think in that sense it's quite accessible for a lot of people, and so I hope that it will help, spread the information on this war. Because yeah, a lot of people probably have never heard of it. At least I had never heard of it in school or anything like that. So yeah, it was a good entryway to learn more about this. In the end, I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book I finished for Blackathon was the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I counted this as a fantasy book that explores the duality of loyalty and betrayal. We definitely have a lot of loyalty and a lot of betrayal in this book. And yeah, this is fantasy, high fantasy. I was so excited to start this series, and this did not disappoint. I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely fell in love with it. We're basically following, or we're mainly following, a woman called... Oh my god, I stopped reading this for like a week and now I don't remember the names. As soon. And she is an origin, so she can manipulate the earth, she can start or stop earthquakes, she can start or stop volcanic activity and stuff like that. And origins in this world are stigmatized, they're discriminated against, and they're basically only allowed to live if they are part of this kind of society, the fulcrum, where their activity is heavily regulated. And at the beginning of the book, the ending of the world starts. So there is a really big thing happening that will lead to the world becoming probably inhabitable for a very long time. And that's nothing new. That's what they call a season, and there have been many seasons before that, but this one seems to be one that will be exceptionally bad. So we follow Asun when she finds out that her husband has killed her little son and has taken her daughter, and she doesn't really know where, and then this like world-ending thing happens, and now she's on her way to find her daughter again. And yeah, you already have loyalty and betrayal in that whole constellation, but there is so much more to this book. You have 2 more kind of perspectives that you follow in this book, 2 other girls, but I don't want to say too much about that. You can experience it. This book has Asun's chapters written in 2nd person, and I love that. It's one of my favorite things in books. I really enjoy that. And the reason for that is also so good. Like, the ending of this book gave me all the feels. I loved it so much. And by now I have also finished the 2nd book, and I can't wait to read the 3rd one. So yeah, I'm really, really invested in this story. And I hope if you for some reason have not read it yet, as I had, you will now, because it's so good. So that was the last book that I finished in February. Now I quickly wanted to mention the 2 books that I had started for Blackathon but then hadn't finished yet. I finished them in the beginning of March. So one was The Obelisk Gate. It's a sequel to the 5th season, and I would have counted that for a fantasy book with trans spectrum representation. The 5th season has that as well, so I could just count it for both, but I thought, you know, Obelisk Gate fits that as well. And then I had also started the book Cherish Farrah by Bethany C. Morrow, and I think I would have counted that as a thriller with mental health, physical health, neurodivergent representation. That is a bit of a stretch, but honestly, Farrah is probably a sociopath. I'm not quite sure, like, it's not like there is any diagnosis in the book, but the way she acts and the way she thinks, it's very obsessive. Yeah, there's definitely going on with her mentally, even though it's not like put on the page what it is supposed to be, but you can feel that, yeah, she has just a very possessive way of thinking, and obsessive, not possessive. Whatever, you get what I'm saying. But as I said, I didn't finish these books in February, so they only count halfway, I guess. Yeah, that's all that I read. Let me know what your favorite book of February was. I would love to hear. Mine was definitely the 5th season. It's so good, and I need you all to pick it up. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, leave a like or a nice comment. I always appreciate those. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon. Bye!